Podcast with Sam Bakhtiar, bringing you the 1% knowledge to help you reach your full potential. Learn what it takes to rise above the 99% and become a 1%er.
Also, not to talk about the effects that the peanut butter sandwich would have on your insulin levels and spiking up your insulin levels because of the carbohydrates and things like that. I know from my experience, Doc, when we have, because I'm in the weight loss industry through my gyms, 95% of people that come to my gyms, they want to lose body fat, and tone up. And I know, like, we have such a hard time getting our vegan clients to lose body fat and lose weight comparing to, the meat eating counterparts.
Well, because one-to-one, you end up consuming much more carbs, So if you have a cup of lentils, again, which I love, you have a cup of cooked lentils, it does give you 20 grams of protein, but again, it is not as complete spectrum as, plant-based, but it's going to, cost you 220 calories, so if you do that, you want to have vegetarian cheese, good luck with that. It's loaded with carbs. And listen, this is, again, not most studies that have been done when you control calories and carbs together do not show that the people that took in more carbs lost less fat when calories are controlled.
It's all about the calories. Yep.
That's total, right? Because at the end of the day, here's the thing. If you and I, let's say if we had similar body types, age, metabolism, if you put us both in a glass box and fed me 1,000 calories of lard a day and fed you 1,000 calories of pasta a day, we would lose the same body fat day after day. After 30 days, we've lost the same amount of weight, okay? Because calories were controlled. But what happens is that it's impossible to do that, but that's under scientific testing studies. But what happens when you're just like, hey, I see so many, I see so many unhealthy herbivores and meat eaters. That goes without saying. But at the same time, to have this notion that, oh my God, if you're vegan, you're just healthy as heck. If you're vegetarian, I see more overweight vegetarians or vegans than you can count on. Why? Because if you're like, I got to sit there and eat pasta, rice, beans, soy, all this other thing just because it's got a plant-based label on it, it's a wake-up call. Yeah. It is a wake-up call. You end up consuming much more calories if you try to go that way. The one thing that the movie alluded to, which, they should have stuck with that more than a bunch of pseudoscience, that yes, animal fat and saturated animal fat does have, now mind you, one of the things they do in the movie, and I'll keep calling it a movie, not a documentary, is they throw out a bunch of numbers that to the layperson, doesn't make much sense. So let's say if you and I are vegan, so let's say they've done a study, a 10-year study, and they showed people that were vegan had a 5% rate of cancer, overall all-cause mortality cancer. And the meat eaters had a 6% chance of cancer, right? They didn't say that in the movie. What they said was that the meat eaters had a 20% higher chance of cancer.
Yeah.
Which is what we call in science or statistics relative risk, because you already had a baseline of 5, which you were comparing it to. So you went from 5 to 6. So that extra 1% is technically a 20% increase, but they don't say that, right? So they're just like, oh, you get a 20% increase in chance. They didn't say that, the vegans, let's say, had 5%, the meat eaters had 6%. And what they don't mention is what was the rest of their diet like?
Yeah.
There is no question, and I'll say this, meat eaters are generally have higher risk behaviors. They have worse diets. Someone that is gone down the vegan hole is health conscious.
Yes, for sure. Exercising,
There's no
absolutely.
question. They're health conscious. They're more aware. They're not smoke. You know, that if you look at if you look at smokers in the rest of the group versus non-vegans are like non-existent in smoking, alcohol consumption. So there's a whole bunch of other risk factors that carnivores have that has nothing to do with them being a carnivore. I mean, some of it, but not directly related to the fact that because I'm eating meat, I have higher cancer. Of course, if you're smoking cigarettes, this is going to happen. Of course, if you're having 5,000 calories and having bonbons and bags of Cheetos and Cheez-Its and lasagna, yes, you're going to have a higher mortality. And studies have not been done. But what happened is this: when they have looked at, so you know, in the movie they talk about endothelial function of the capillary.
About that. That's there you go. Now we get into all that stuff. Okay.
So they talk about endothelial functions, and listen, it looked great. They had a bunch of little graphics, little, you know, red blood cells flowing through. Except, you know, you can measure endothelial function. They never discussed that. You know, they never showed that actually endothelial function going down. You know, they have a scene where they bring, you know, some athletes and they give them burritos, right? They give them burritos and they're like, oh, well, this was the plant one and this was meat one, and we spun their blood down and this one looks cloudier. Except what they do, that's not how studies are done. Studies are, they do not list the macros of what the meat eater burritos were versus that one. Because guess what? Yes, if you controlled that burrito and I gave this guy an all plant-based low fat, because plants have fat too, and on this one I loaded it with a bunch of crap, they didn't say, hey, these all had 300 calories across the board and had the same macros. They didn't discuss that at all. So these are the things that were a major issue in that group. And then even when they talked about endothelial function, they just were like, oh yeah, it reduces it. They didn't say, hey, we did this test on 100 subjects before and after. You know, as you said, in scientific literature, the gold standard is what we call a double-blind placebo test. And the reason it's called a double-blind placebo, it means that the researchers are blind to the information. The recipients, the participants, are blind to what they're getting. And all of this is administered usually by a third party, and everything is labeled. No one has a clue. So for example, if we were testing this cholesterol medication, the researchers, and you know, there's 100 people there, the researchers have no idea what they're giving to the person. They don't know if that bottle is a sugar pill or the real cholesterol medication, because they just get a whole bunch of bottles that are labeled with, you know, scan codes, QC codes, whatever it may be, and they just give that. They have no idea. The patient that's getting it, when they sign up for a study, they're like, you may be getting the real thing, you may not be, you have no idea. And then 90 days later, a year later, as they follow them up, that's what they call the reveal. And the third company, the tertiary company that's administering this blind, double-blind placebo study, is the one that reveals literally all the cards are flipped over, and you're like, ah, we see these people got the real, had this, the people that got the sugar pill got this, and let's now compare data. That's how it's done. What do you think is the likelihood, like that burrito test that they did, it was sponsored by like the Haas Avocado Corporation. Like it's listed at the bottom, like no joke.
What?
Yes. Tell me this. What do you think is the likelihood of the guys that had avocados?
And said the avocado didn't raise the cholesterol, right? I remember saying that.
Yeah, but remember, like, what do you think is the likelihood that that they would actually include information in that movie that went against what their theory was? What do you think is the likelihood of that? Non-existent, right? I mean, it's not going to be possible. There's no way James Cameron going to invest 140, $200 million in a pea protein company and by any way come out anywhere in that movie and say animal protein is better for you. It's just not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. That would be very foolish to say that. So that is, so, you know, there's so many misinformation in that movie literally from beginning to end. Every time they mention something, I would cringe. Like I literally like they would start out like they would say something like, "Oh, I hope they show this. I hope they back it up with XYZ," and they would just make this massive jump to the next subject, and they would consider that like squashed and done and proven, and move on to the next topic.
I remember. I think just for legal purposes, I remember one of the doctors said, just so you know, this is not backed up by scientific studies. So this is not a scientific study. This is, I remember, seeing that, and I'm like, okay, but they had to put that for like legal purposes.
Yes.
And
what they talk about is, so again, they show these elite athletes, game changers, and how they turn their lives around and are at the top of their game because they went plant-based, right? And good for them. They talk about the guy, the power lifter that carried, the stone that was X amount of weight. What they didn't say is that his record's been broken by like 300-400 pounds by a guy that's a meat eater. Right? So yes, the guy carried, 1,000, 1,100 pounds, but what didn't show is that the meat eater guy carried 1,400 pounds. So if you're going to, again, state information, once again, this does not mean that if you are on 100% plant-based, that you cannot add lean muscle to your body. This does not mean that you cannot be healthy. It just means that you have to be much more involved, much more intricate with your food choices. You may have a tough time if you are in a situation where you want to restrict calories, whether it's for a weight cut, for a fight, whether it's for a stage show that you're doing, or whether you want to lose weight and you need to cut calories. You're going to have a hard time having a 1,200 calorie and maintaining your protein. In the study they talk about, in this movie, they talk about how, you can have 1.6, most experts suggest that you can have 1.6 grams of protein up to 2.2 based on your kilogram per body weight, per day. Except what they don't talk about is every one of those studies that have been done that show what the optimal is to put you in an anabolic state has been done with animal protein. There's not been a study that's been done that shows 1.6 grams of plant protein puts you in an anabolic state. So imagine me talking about, fuel consumption with gasoline, and the only thing I refer to are studies in diesel engines. Like, it just makes no sense.
Now, doctor, correct me if I'm wrong. The way you measure, how anabolic a person is, is by testing nitrogen balance, right? If a person is in positive nitrogen balance versus negative nitrogen balance. So, why do somebody, I think the best way to be able to figure out, give somebody 100 grams of X amount, let's say pea protein, and 100 grams of egg protein, and then see how, measure the nitrogen balance, if it's positive, it's negative, or how much is positive, how much is negative. That much I remember from the college days.
Nitrogen balance is huge, but to take it even one step further, the good studies that have been done that just show, whether it's just, hey, which type of chest exercise adds the most amount of muscle. The best way is when they do the isotope studies. So they'll actually, give you the protein that are with isotopes, and then you do exercises or based on a diet, and then they literally will do imaging studies, and they can see, hey, you added 10 grams of lean mass to your chest. You added 100 grams of lean muscle to your body, or whatever it is. And then they can compare and say, hey, this type of diet did this type of diet did that. This is how many times, this is essentially the most accurate way to check how anabolic you were. Because at the end of the day, we can talk about all the in-between steps. The question is did you add lean muscle or not?
Yeah.
Whatever you did, whether it's your exercise, diet, at the end of the day, after this 4 weeks, 6 weeks of you doing whatever you changed, did that cause an increase in lean mass? And they usually do that with isotope studies, because then they're literally, they're tagged, those amino acids are tagged with isotopes, and you can see, hey, you got deposited in your left biceps, and you can actually track that. They're much more involved, but that's what kind of good science is about.
Well, that science wasn't available when I was in college. That's got to be me. Oh, like, wait a second, man. Last time I checked, my information is outdated.
But yeah, but that's kind of the, they talk about, how much protein you should take, and that you can just get that all from plants. And again, you can, but it may be more difficult. You have to be much more aware of, listen, I can have, 3 ounces of a chicken breast, right? Gives me 2 to 2.5 grams of leucine, 30 grams of protein, and it's 150 calories, right? That means that's significant. That is significant that I can have such a small amount and it is packed. And guess what? It's got everything. I don't have to sit there and go to USDA and look up and say, oh, did this have this spectrum? Well, since I have rice that's missing methionine, I'm going to have beans that are not, or vice versa. So you end up working a lot of puzzles to kind of make it work. But once again, all the studies that have been done, every single one that shows patients or participants that included plant-based diet that did better, or their markers of inflammation went down, they were having whole plants. And if there's one thing I like to drive home today to people, is not that plants are bad. Plants are amazing. As I said, probably by weight, 80-90% of what I put in my body every single day is plant-based. Every single night, Sam, I make the salad. It's a bowl, and if you literally weight it, like the bowl itself weighs maybe half a pound, but the entire thing weighs 2.5, 3 pounds when I'm done with it. Like, if you looked at it, you think it's for 4 or 5 people. No, I eat that by myself, right? And it's got the most amazing vegetables in there. I have arugula, I have watercress, I have spinach, I have kale, I have sweet peppers, tomatoes, avocados. I have it all in there. Apple cider vinegar, crushed salt, pepper. I eat that every single night. I have 3-4 servings of fruit daily. I mean, everything I try to, I have lentils, I have beans, I have 100 grams of walnuts and almonds and Brazilian nuts, unroasted, unsalted. I'm all about
whole plants.
Whole plants. I don't buy broccoli in a bottle. Like people, everyone is in this kick, in this laziness that, well, you don't want to have this, but guess what? You can get the extract of it in here. No, it is not the same. No study has been done to show that once you process, chew up, and this, and you get that, is the same thing as having because that plant grew as a whole plant, and whatever its benefits are within all of it. It's in its leaves, it's in its stalks, it's in its seeds, it's everywhere. So you have to be able to consume the whole thing. And that's all I can say.
Well, you know what, even Burger King, man, I don't know if you've seen Burger King's commercial lately, man. They're all about the Impossible Burger.
Yes, that's what I said. If you just look up the ingredients to Impossible Burger, and it is like fructose, soy, starch. I mean, it's got 75 things in there. And to me, it's like, if you really want a burger, just have a burger. I promise it won't kill you. I promise it won't kill you.
I promise it won't kill you.
It won't kill you. It will not kill you. I mean, if you look at people that live, you look at the populations that live in Okinawa, Mediterranean, Scandinavia, parts of Italy, Greece. They eat meat. And they live to be in their 90s with, no Alzheimer's, dementia. You look at their calcium scores in their arteries, they're non-existent. I mean, they have 0 plaque formation. And they eat meat. So if they can do it, now what they don't eat is they don't go and get, a supersized fries and Big Mac and soda. And that's what is, funny to me. Is participants that will talk about veganism, but they'll have that Impossible Burger with fries and Coke.
So what I'm hearing from you, Doc, what I'm hearing from you, plants are great for you as long as they're whole plants. They don't have a bunch of, so from what I'm hearing from you, that you need to, eat all kinds of variety of different foods and stay away from processed foods.
Yes.
And
they've even done, to go back, because this is what I wanted to mention. So, we have markers of inflammation that we can test for, right? So, what we call CRP, which is, a C-reactive protein. So if you'll see, they'll throw mumbo jumbo again. The more mumbo jumbo you hear in one of these documentaries, the more likely it's crap, because when you do that, what you're trying to do is sound really impressive. And trust me, when I can sit there and just, throw a bunch of chemical names and so on, and it may sound impressive, but the reason I'm really bringing it down to kind of a normal day-to-day conversation, and this is the way I speak to my patients, is they appreciate and they understand that I'm trying to speak at a level that everybody understands and can comprehend, but it still is, scientific and reasonable in nature. And so C-reactive protein, and we have different subtypes of it that are even more specific, but I won't go into details of that, is, is a marker of inflammation that we can physically test for with the blood. And going back to what I said about animal fat and how animal fat can raise, saturated animal fat can raise, CRP. What's interesting is that when you consume animal fat with a good amount of plant-based material, guess what? Studies showed that it does not raise your CRP your markers of inflammation. Why? Again, why I keep saying how plants are great for you, because all the different antioxidants and the different properties that the plants have, such as kale, spinach, watercress, broccoli, and so on, they have a way to almost counteract that. So now, yes, if you sat there and just ate bacon and lard all day, yes, your CRP is going to go up.
So real quick.
Yes,
so,
yes.
So then obviously you're not a big proponent of a ketogenic diet.
Here's the thing. I'm really not a proponent of anything that is on the extreme.
Yes.
And that's essentially what it comes down to, because what happens is this: whatever you do that is extreme, it is much harder to maintain it long term. So if you look at the dropout rate out of a keto diet, it's pretty high because it is hard to maintain that. An Atkins diet is extremely hard to maintain because, yes, can you do it for 30 days, 60 days, 90 days? Can you do it for a year? No. So what happens is that anytime you start going to the extremes, it is much harder. That's when it becomes more of a chore. And what I tell my patients is this: listen, if you want to get into your wedding dress in 60 days, 90 days, we need to drop 10, 15 pounds, and we want to go extreme, and we know we're like going in with a plan that this is not a permanent lifestyle change. We're doing this because you got your prom coming up, or you got your wedding, or your 20-year high school reunion, whatever it may be. We can do extreme things to drop weight, right? I mean, you can smoke crack and meth and lose weight too, but it's not highly recommended. And mind you, nowhere am I saying keto or Atkins or anywhere close to that. Now, there are many things. Like I treat patients that have, epilepsy and seizures. And there's been many studies that have been shown that having a ketogenic diet reduces chance of epilepsy and seizures, right? Because when you surviving on those ketones, they have an anti-epileptic effect, to the point where the military has specific programs just for the Navy SEALs. I mean, actively they're studying ketogenic diets for divers and particularly Navy SEALs, because when they're in lack of oxygen underwater, it increases your chances of eliciting a seizure. So by them being on a ketogenic diet, it can reduce that. So there are many aspects of ketogenic diet I like. Would I tell somebody that, hey, if you want to, you're 35 years old and you want to live a healthy lifestyle, do ketogenic for the rest of your life? I wouldn't recommend that, because once again, you're not taking in all the nutrients, because again, plants to me are so important, and you should include plants. And it's much harder to be in ketogenic when it's 70% fat, 75% fat, 25% protein, and you're really cutting back on other things. But go ahead. I somewhat interrupted.
No, I love it, man. I'm just taking it. So you talked about arterial health.
Yes.
Keeping your arteries healthy and preventing heart attack and stroke. and things like that. Why don't you give me your top 5 things, top 5 things to do and eat, and top 5 supplements for arterial health?
Definitely, supplement-wise, I'm a huge fan of curcumin. I'm a huge fan of EPA fish oil. Now, omega-3.
I just learned about that because the DHA, the one that has DHA, kind of raises your thing. And then I actually went.
Yeah, so there's a lot of, so we can talk about many aspects of it. So first, there's this notion that if it says fish oil is good for you, generally not. So if you go to like Walmart and it says fish oil, 1,500 milligrams, just read the back, right? Read the back. The 2 most important aspects of omega-3. So we know omega-6s have problems. And when something says fish oil, most of it is omega-6, which is actually bad for you. Now, omega-3, the 2 major components of omega-3 are DHA and EPA, okay? So if you look at the one that just says fish oil, have some big number in bold that says like 1,500 milligrams.
God, I fucked up. I did that. I went to Costco. I got a big bottle of fish oil, and then
do this. I wish you had it in front of me. Do you have it in front of you so we could read it together?
No, I was at home and I looked at it and I said fish oil, 1,000 milligrams. I'm like, oh, this is a good deal, right? And then later on, when I found out about EPA, DHA, and EPA, DHA ratio, I saw that. Give me that one. That's not the Costco one. But
okay. So show the label. So show the front label. What does it say?
It says fish oil, 1,200 milligrams, 360 milligrams of EPA.
Okay. So now read the back. That 1,200. How many capsules is that?
2.
Okay. So you see how they lie in a sense, right? They give you this big number, but you got to take 2 of them. Yep. So now the EPA and DHA is what?
Okay, so EPA is 360 milligrams and DHA is 240 milligrams.
Okay, so imagine, so you're taking 2 capsules and then the rest of it that says others, what does it say?
Okay, it says others.
Like oils or?
Total omega is 720 milligrams. Fish oil is 2,400 milligrams.
Exactly. So mind you, almost 70% of that is essentially crap. And oil, which is calories, and omega-6. The reason they don't say that because it's omega-6. And omega-6.
Hold on. You see this right here? I just learned about that. You know what I mean? So then I learned about Vasepa, which was so expensive. Then I went on Amazon and found it that they actually make EPA only fish oils now.
Yes. So we've known for a while that omega-3 is good for you, but there's been lots of studies over the last 5 to 10 years that have compared, okay, what happens when EPA and DHA is combined together? What happens if they're in different ratios? And what happens if you just give one of each? And to basically summarize it, they're both good, but we know that if you give EPA alone, it works better. When you give EPA and DHA, it may actually raise your LDL a little bit. When you give EPA,
it did for me. I didn't know, and it did for me. I started mega dosing with fish oil, and I went my cholesterol was shot up. I'm like, and that's when I found out that
EPA will lower your LDL, you lower your triglycerides significantly, and will raise your HDL, which is what we want, right? So EPA has been studied. Now for you, you can't take just one capsule. It's recommended for you to have like a solid 2 to 4 grams a day. So, and again, EPA is not EPA. The British have a saying, we're not that rich to buy cheap stuff. It honestly is true. There is a reason why most things cost, if there's a bottle of fish oil or EPA that's $20 and one is $40, I promise you there is a reason, right? So how it's processed, was it exposed to heat? What was the filtration process? All that makes a difference. Mind you, I'm not big enough I don't sell anything. I don't sponsor. I'm not sponsored. But like, if you look at the Nordic natural brands, those are some of the best ones. So if you look at the EPA, pure EPA, ultra low filtration. They're all cold processed. There's no heating. There's 2 or 3 good brands out there. I won't even mention them. Just get on Amazon and look at EPA only. Look at the ones that are highly rated, that are not processed using heat, and that's what you want. So curcumin is huge. I take a solid 2 to 3 grams of curcumin a day. Huge anti-inflammatory process. Cardiovascularly. I'm a huge fan of ubiquinol. Ubiquinol is, the actual active derivative of CoQ10, and that is something that is literally like your testosterone and your hormones that declines with age. It, at 40, 50 years old, you have almost 10-20% of the ubiquinol you had in your body in your adolescence. And so replacing that,
it's important to get the ubiquinol with an L, not with an N.
Exactly. Not ubiquinone, but ubiquinol is the active component. And you want to take, 100 to 200 milligrams a day of that, which is extremely helpful. For patients that, and forgive me if I keep saying patients, because that's what I deal with on a day-to-day basis. You don't have to be a patient. But for people that may have history, or they're very carb sensitive, or they have diabetes or pre-diabetic, or even struggling with weight, I usually recommend bearberry and alpha lipoic acid. Alpha lipoic acid is one of the top antioxidants you can possibly put in your body, but it also acts as what we call a GDA, a glucose dumping agent, when it's combined with bearberry. And bearberry is basically a root of a tree that's found in Africa, and many studies have shown that is as equally effective as metformin for reducing your baseline glucose and insulin sensitivity. So I take bearberry. My father has type 2 diabetes, even though I'm not close to it. I know I'm kind of carb sensitive. If I have lots of carbs, weight gain goes up, my baseline glucose starts to go up. So I try to kind of tailor made depending on what my patients need. But I think across the board, I take liposomal vitamin C on a daily basis. For people that do not know, vitamin C that you just take in a bottle, 500,000 milligrams, they have obviously some use, but they're pretty kind of useless. Just
doesn't get absorbed.
Just have some blueberries, you're far better off. But if you actually want the actual benefits of vitamin C, you want what's called liposomal vitamin C. And liposomal, the reason it's called liposomal is for vitamin C to actually cross the barrier and get into the blood and do its things that it does, it gets destroyed in the stomach. And so the liposomal vitamin C is designed in a way where the vitamin C molecules are actually surrounded by liposomes. They're essentially almost like fat molecules that protect, almost like a little cocoon, and allow this vitamin C to be carried to the bloodstream and do its action. So, I have 30, 40 patients that cough in my face on a daily basis. And so liposomal vitamin C, it's great for hair, nail, your immune system. It has so many hosts of different benefits that, I take liposomal vitamin C on a daily basis. We're talking about cardiovascular. What else can I take?
What do you think about niacin?
I take niacin every single day. If we would have got on this podcast maybe 30 minutes early, I was beet red. And yes, if you're going to take niacin, take the flushing kind. The non-flushing niacin is worthless. It has never been shown to do anything. You're taking 100%. So, niacin, it sucks because real good niacin is flushing. It causes you to flush. And it's the worst in the first week or two that you take it. And people get really turned off by niacin because the first time they take it, they take like a massive dose of some kind. And in 10 minutes, they're red from head to toe. They're burning, they're tingling. And they're like, oh my God. I've had people that have gone to the ER, like thinking they're going to die. No, you're not going to die from niacin flush. But if you I tell my patients start with 250 milligram flushing type niacin, and you can take it with aspirin, and aspirin reduces the flushing sensation. But I tell them don't even bother with the aspirin. Just know, it's going to last about 15, 20 minutes and it goes away. But what happens after about 2-3 weeks of use, your flushing lasts 5 minutes. I've been using niacin for a long time, and now when I take 500 milligrams, 750 milligrams, I'll get a little bit of tingly skin. I may get a little bit of red for about 5-7 minutes and it goes away. At the beginning, when I start taking it for 30 minutes, I would be red. But all the benefits of niacin, which is vitamin B1, happens from the flushing kind. If you get a chance after this, look up the non-flushing, and pretty much all the benefits that niacin has is non-existent. Okay. Because it's not even, they almost say it because it's not even, it's not nicotinamic acid, it's nicotinamide, which is like almost an inactive compound. So like it doesn't have any of the health benefits. But niacin is great. As I'm talking to you, I'm kind of going through my counter and see the supplements that I take. I take obviously supplements, different thing, but since we talked about cardiovascular, I mean, I take a good amount of lion's mane mushroom, kind of some of the best stuff out there, but that's more for, neurotopics and, focus and brain and those kinds of things, which is not cardiovascular related, but those are some of the supplements that I recommend to all my patients.
Awesome, man. And how about your top 5 foods? I know you talked about avocados being really good, nuts, seeds.
Yes. Listen, organic eggs, I'm talking not your $2 for 3 dozen eggs. I'm talking true free range, grass fed, cockroach fed, like literally out in the wild chicken eggs. I incorporate that daily into my diet. Studies have shown that if you're having free range, real eggs that has not been, again, part of this film that I had an issue with is, they'll talk about, meat and this. Yes, chickens that are raised in coops and are stacked on top of each other, shitting on top of each other, eating crap. Yes, that is not good meat that you want to put in your body. The same way that processed plant food is not good. So again, just because certain chickens are essentially farmed or done a certain way does not mean that you cannot get yourself organic chicken, free range chicken, or grass-fed beef, and so on. If you see on my Instagram, I grind my own meat. I don't buy prepared ground meat. I buy my own slabs of organic meat, and I have a grinder and I grind my own meat. So there are steps that you can take. This is not about it, mind you. I love cute, cuddly, furry animals. I'm the biggest animal lover. So this is not about PETA. This is not about your religion. We're talking strictly as a matter of health and nutrition. If your religion says you can't have meat, all for it, but just be very wary of the plant foods that you put in. And just because it came, and most likely, I will flat out say, if it came in a box, a bag, a bottle, a can, and a wrapper, and it says plant-based, I am willing to bet the entire house, all my cars, that it's garbage. Okay, that's it.
Well, dog, man, this has been absolutely eye-opening, man. Just when I thought, when I thought that, I knew everything, I had to just, through a couple of things. I was trying to lower my cholesterol. I upped it. I went back. I'm like, I was supposed to lower it. I started microdosing on fish oil, and I found out the fish oil that I had was crap and was costly.
So since we talked about the food, so, free range eggs are great. Grass-fed beef, but some people that want to really go more on the organic route, if you have access to bison meat, extremely healthy, higher protein, lower cholesterol, and really bison, they don't do what they do to bison to they do to cows. They're not corn-fed. They really need grass. So that's even a healthier red meat per se if you want. Chicken. So I'm a fan of all lean meats. Okay, so let's just put it out there. Do I have bacon? Sure. Once every couple of months, I will have me some bacon. And guess what? With it, I'll have some vegetables too, because I know, what I said earlier, if you have a good amount of antioxidants and plant-based, so that's what happens is that people will limit themselves. And if you're not a happy person on a day-to-day basis, everything about your life becomes unhappy. And food is a reward for many people. Food should be pleasurable. You should be able to enjoy your food. If you're just eating, if they were like, listen, styrofoam and cardboard is very healthy for you, and you live to be 100 years old, I still am not going to eat it, because if I'm going to be miserable the entire time, eating styrofoam, it's not going to work out. But am I going to eat bacon every day, every week? No. I mean, I think last time I had bacon was maybe 2 months ago, 3 months ago. But when I want bacon, I'll have bacon, but 9 out of 10. And what I tell people is that you are judged what matters long-term. Like life is like a 401k plan. People will start putting towards a 401k, like $50 a week. And after 6 months, they're like, I only got $600. What do you mean? No, it doesn't work that way. It's the compounded interest 20, 30 years down the road. So with health, diet, nutrition, it's a long-term plan. Is what we do today pays dividends later. And you're judged by the 95% of things you do, not by the 5%. So if 95% of the times you're eating clean, healthy, in whichever way that you feel, whether it's veganism, vegetarianism, or you want to have a complete protein, one of the diets that has been studied the most is the Mediterranean diet, like active study. And if you look at those guys have essentially like 30% protein, 30% fat, 30% carbs. That like literally it's like the 30-30-30 diet. And because they're eating things as they were made. They literally are crushing the olives and taking the olive out of the olive. They eat the whole plant. They will slaughter the lamb, the sheep, and eat lamb and cows and everything in between. So,
all right, Doc. My assistant right there has held a big white paper. Show me the white paper you just held up. He goes, "Don't finish this podcast until you ask him this." So he basically wrote this. What do you think about creatine?
Oh man, that's a great subject. I'm a fan in certain conditions. We know 100% that it increases strength. The problem is that the results are kind of temporary. Creatine, if you are embarking on a new journey of fitness, weightlifting, any of those things, and you want to increase your endurance, your strength, and so on, creatine is something that can definitely help you. It can definitely increase muscle fullness because of the water absorption it does. Your muscles will work better. They're stronger. There's many benefits of it. The problem is in my practice, I see patients will all end up overdoing it in some way, and it will cause. Listen, your kidney has to filter creatine out, and it can put a load. So someone that is already consuming 250 grams of protein a day, your kidney is working a little overboard to try to process that. And you start adding other chemicals and other supplements. The question is do you really need it? And when you look at studies that people have done with creatinine is, yes, let's say it increases your bench press by 5%. It does all those things, but you stop creatine and that same person does that same test 30 days later, it goes back to baseline. Because it's a water soluble compound and it doesn't stay, which is why you have to take it on a daily basis. And literally the moment you stop, most of the benefits go away. So I'm a fan of it for certain situations. If you're coming up for, it's obviously not a banned substance. You can take it. It's fully legal. So for certain things, but for me, like I do not take it. I don't.
You're going for longevity.
For me, and again, and that's the key thing is that everybody that I meet has really a different purpose. I have patients of mine that their goal is to lose 150 pounds. Their goal is not because they want to increase their bench or they even want to add lean mass because we're not even there yet. If you're 350 pounds, our goal is, yes, in the process of working out and you building lean mass, it increases your basal metabolic rate, which allows you to burn more fat. But at the beginning, we're kind of in a cutting phase. We are trying to be calorie restricted. We're trying to lose weight. So at that point, it's the volume that matters. And everything that they've done study-wise show that volume, we can talk about, time under tension, all those things. But at the end of the day, it's the volume. Now, does that mean that I can, pick up the cell phone and do a million curls with it and develop 18-inch biceps? No, that's not the volume that we're talking about. It has to be good volume. It has to be resistant. It has to put a strain on you. You have to work hard to get that volume done. But we know that if you do enough resistant volume of that muscle, you're going to gain lean mass with the proper nutrition. And so the creatinine, but me being 45 years old, everything, and we talked about this last time, having 2 kids now, yes, I want to be lean. I typically walk around with a 4 or 6 pack, depending on what time of the year it is. And I like that. But my majority of my focus for me personally is longevity. I want to be 80. I want to be 90 to see my kids grow up. It's not about, I need to be 4% body fat. I'm not getting on stage. I do all kinds of sports, but I don't compete at the highest level or anywhere close to that. So my goals are different. Now I have patients that come in that are pro bodybuilders. I have fitness competitors. I have professional athletes that are my patients. And every one of them, because their goal is different, you kind of have to tailor-made based on what they want.
It makes total sense. Well, obviously, if somebody has some kid, you're right. You raise a good point. If you're taking 250 grams of protein, and
which is one of the reasons that many times, and most people kind of really overlook that. When they say, before starting a new supplement, consult your physician. Before starting this new workout or whatever, consult your physician. And that's kind of thrown out everywhere. No one really ever does it. But that's why it behooves you. Many times patients have come in and like, hey, I'm starting this, I just want to run some basic labs and see. And we look and we're like, the kidney's not functioning so well already. We may have to put you on a reduced protein diet. Like, forget about the 1.6 grams of protein per kilograms of lean mass. We need to go below that because your kidney, let's figure out what's going on with your kidney first. Or, as we mentioned, if your hormones are off, if your thyroid is not working, yes, you're trying to lose weight, but it's like walking up hills with a 50-pound rucksack behind you. So I do really urge, wherever you are, that if you are either trying to lose weight, or, I have patients that come in, like, I haven't seen a doctor in 10 years. Go run some basic labs. Before spending $1,100 on the next iPhone, spend a couple $100 on yourself. Go get some, that's what happens. People come in. Listen, I just had a guy in my office yesterday. I had a guy in my office yesterday who, he was self-pay. He didn't have insurance. He had all these problems. And I just was like, hey, we need to do these labs to find out like what the problem is. This is not like a sprained elbow or a sore throat that I can take a look and see what it is. And mind you, the labs altogether was going to cost like $200. He was like, no, I can't afford that, blah, blah. But the whole reason he was there is because he goes once a month to Paris to see his girlfriend. So I was like, okay, so you have money to fly to Paris monthly to see your girlfriend, not your wife, not a family, girlfriend in Paris, but you have a problem spending $200 to check your labs checked for a problem that you've come to see me for. This is what happens when people can't put their priorities right, and it happens every single day.
I remember there was a few of these occasions. There's many of these occasions, but I remember, there was a time, like I said, there's probably 100 of these cases. But at this one, I remember because I think it was the first time that happened. I was in a personal training field. I was going to chiropractic school doing personal training, and I remember I was outside, on my lunch break eating a meal, and a guy came in. He drove a convertible Jaguar, brand new. I was just a young kid. I was admiring his car. He came out in a suit, nice Rolex, and his doctor had a note from his doctor, borderline diabetic, hypertension, high cholesterol, needs to exercise. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And he came in and goes, so how much is personal training? I said, well, it was, back then it was like $480 a month. I was like, it's $480 a month. And he looked at me like I was crazy. Like he told me, like he looked at me like I was crazy. And I'm looking at him, he's driving an $80,000 car, $10,000, $15,000 watch back then, and a few $1,000 suit. You can't really argue with that. It's just, if they're not their priorities,
I have smokers. Listen, I have smokers that are spending $20 a day on cigarettes. And when I tell them get some grass-fed beef, they're like, oh, it's too expensive. Like, what are you talking about? Like, it's like you have to, and listen, I fully understand not everybody may have the funds to do everything.
I get it.
But if you have money and you are spending on other frivolous things, but you're choosing those over your health, and nutrition is your health, your laboratories, your physiologic function is part of your health. If you're skipping that and putting others, if you're going out partying Friday nights, you're going to the movies, you're going to the clubs, you're buying tables, bottles, all that, you can do all that, but you can't go see a doctor, or you can't go get personal training or join a gym, then your priorities are set wrong. And we see this on a daily basis.
I couldn't agree with you more. Doc, I know we've been here for like a couple of hours. I know you got precious time. I got to go to pee right now. And hey, man, we got to do this again. We got to do this
100%.
again. I look forward to having these conversations with you, because I learned so much. And my right hand man is over here. He's like, wow.
Maybe what we should do is we should come up with 3-4 topics, or maybe just have your audience comment or post what they want to talk about next, and whatever gets maybe the top responses, we can do that again.
I thoroughly enjoy the conversation, Doc. I appreciate you. I know, today's probably your day off. I don't know if you're going to the clinic.
I'll be actually heading to the gym in the next 10 minutes as soon as I get off.
All right, Doctor. Thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely. Have a great day, my man.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Hey guys, if you liked today's episode, do me a huge favor. Go ahead and leave a comment below, subscribe to the channel, leave me a review, and tag a few friends that you think can benefit from what we shared today. Really appreciate it. God bless.